Hey y'all, so I'm back this week with lesson number 5 in our Ruth study. Today's focus passage was Ruth 2, 1 through 9. So I have notes here, I have my Life Application Bible here, and then I have typed up some notes for y'all, so if I'm looking all over the place, I promise I'm focused on y'all. Anyway, so in this lesson, we are introduced to Boaz. I actually used his name as one of my word studies because I love to do character studies, and since we were introduced to him, I wanted to know a little bit more about him and really do a deep dive on who Boaz was. And so at the bottom here, I kind of just wrote a little bit about that. So Boaz actually means strength. He was which if you are using the book that Miss Crystal gave us, at the bottom, she has some, on some pages, she has some things written out. And on this one, she has, Boaz represents Jesus Christ, our kinsman redeemer. And so that is one of the things that I added here in the character word study, is that he is a picture of Christ in the Old Testament. And then I wrote down John 10:11, which says, let me look it up, this one. I have these marked. Sorry, y'all. It says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. So that just kind of tells a little bit about Jesus's character and Boaz's character. He was a man of his word. He had a keen sense of responsibility. He lived in Bethlehem, and his occupation was a wealthy farmer. One thing that I really enjoyed about my Life Application Bible is that it gives me a character study on Boaz as well. So it says that here, heroes are easier to admire than to find. They are seldom conscious of their moments of heroism, and others may not recognize their acts of heroic. Heroes simply do the right thing at the right time, whether or not they realize the impact their actions will have. So that really describes Boaz as we're introduced to him in chapter 2. So at the beginning of chapter 2, I think it's important to know that there was a law. The Israelites had a law that wheat and barley was harvested. Reapers were hired to cut down the stalks and tie them into bundles. So the law demanded that the corners of the field would be left, they would not be harvested by the people that were hired. They were to be left for the gleaners, which is another word that I used in my word study. And glean means to gather what has been intentionally left behind after harvest. So the law stated that they could not use the corners. They could harvest everything inside the field, but they had to leave the corners, and it was intentionally left behind for them. That's why in the definition it says intentional. So I say that because Ruth was in the corner of the field, and so the law stated that the poor or the widows or strangers, they could come and reap the harvest from the corners of the field. And so that's where she was. It was kind of for lack of a better word, like a welfare program for Israel. And so she was a widow with no means of providing for herself. So she was able to go and gather grain from the corners of the field. And so that's where she's at when we are introduced to her in, well, not introduced, but where we see her in chapter 2. So chapter 2 starts out like this. It says, and Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth, of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, let me now go into the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. So Boaz was a relative of Naomi's husband, which blows my mind. I mean, the Bible just continues to show us like how small the world really is. So we're talking about these people who have left their homeland and went to Moab, and then they come back and they're finding people that they're related to. Now, that might not sound so crazy, back then. Maybe things were, on a smaller level, but now I just find that amazing. So, it was a relative of Naomi's husband, a man of great wealth of the family of Elimelech. His name was Boaz. So Naomi was related to this man Boaz through her deceased husband Elimelech. We don't know exactly how he was related. The Bible doesn't tell us, like, was it his uncle, his nephew? It doesn't tell us. But we know that he was related to Naomi's husband and that he was a man of great wealth. During the famine, when Elimelech, Naomi, and their whole family had left the promised land and gone to Moab, Boaz stayed behind. So that's what I was telling you. They left, then they came back, and they're meeting people that they are related to, essentially. But God provided for Boaz. In fact, he made him a man of great wealth. So there was a famine going on, but he still showed favor on Boaz and still continued to bless his family. So 10 years before, Naomi and her family made a choice, and it was during hard times. Like, we all make decisions in hard times. It was a time of famine. They didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't have to make the wrong choice that they did, but they didn't know that. They didn't know that the people of Bethlehem were not going to perish from hunger. They really felt like that was what was going to happen, and that's why they went to Moab. So they get back. All the people are still there, and they have been blessed beyond what Naomi's family was blessed for leaving. And so a lot of times I think that we as humans, as flesh, we justify wrong choices because of difficult circumstances. And that's exactly what Elimelech thought he was doing. Like, he moved his family to Moab, and he made this decision out of circumstances at the time. But when Naomi and them get back to Bethlehem, they're realizing that maybe that was the wrong choice, and trying to, I guess, justify it. So it says the exact expression rendered a mighty man of wealth is elsewhere translated to a mighty man of valor, and that's in Judges 11:11. We perhaps get the force of it by thinking of our word knight. So Boaz is very similar to a knight. Let's see. So it goes on to talk. It says, "And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, Let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, Go, my daughter." So Ruth is saying, like, please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain. She's like, please let me go to work. Let me do something. Let me help out. That's very much, I think, our personality as women is like, what can we do? How can we help? Where do we start, So Leviticus 19:9-10 commanded farmers in Israel that they should not completely harvest their fields. That's what I was talking about earlier with the law. They were commanded to cut the corners, which I'm just now realizing, people are like, don't cut corners, but they were told to cut corners. Anyway, so they always had to leave something behind so people would come in and glean it, which is the intentional part of it being left behind. That was kind of like the social assistance or the welfare assistance in Israel. Farmers were not to completely harvest their fields, so the poor and needy could come and glean the remains for themselves. So she left. Ruth, on her own initiative, set out to glean in the fields to support her and her mother-in-law, Naomi. This showed a wonderful, hardworking spirit in Ruth. That's what I was saying. She wanted to be involved. She wanted to take care of herself. She had to figure it out. But it was also spiritual. It would not have been spiritual for Ruth to sit home and just sit there. Like, she needed to go out and take care of herself. So it says, and she went and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and her hap was to lie on part of the field belonging unto Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said unto the reapers, The Lord be with you. We know that nothing just happens. God knows everything. So I think that Ruth came to the field because God was guiding her there. And I think that shows how his invisible hand works in our lives too. If she would have stayed home and waited for that spiritual feeling, or just waited, she might have waited a long time, and she probably would have went to the wrong field. But instead, she felt the hand of God leading her, and so she wound up in Boaz's field. So then, I'm just going to read the rest of it. Then said Boaz unto his servants that was set over the reapers, Whose damsel is this? And the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, Is it the Moabitish damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab? And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and hath continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. So she's saying, please let me glean, let me gather what the law says I can do. And the people working in the field, he's telling Boaz, like, she has come and she's continued, though she rested little in the house, meaning like she didn't just wait around for this to happen. She came out, she is working hard. I think it's showing like a submissive attitude. And so there's a sense in which the gleaning was hers by right. I mean, the law said that she could do it, but she kindly and properly asked. So she said, please let me do that. She didn't say like, the law says I can do this, don't send me away. Like, she could have easily said that, and her spirit would have been ruined. So we have to be very careful on how we handle things, even if it's right. So we're under that same inspection. At times we don't know it, but we're being watched by others. So Ruth was being watched by the people in the field, and when she started, asking, that's when they were like, okay, she has the right spirit about her. And so I wrote, if someone described your faith, what would they say? We see here that Ruth, when they were talking about her, it says, that, so she came and continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. Meaning she was a hard worker. They were able to say that about her, and I think that's amazing. So then we get to verse 8, and it says, Then Boaz said to Ruth, Hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by thy maidens. Let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch thee? And when thou art athirst, go into the vessels, and drink of that which the young men have drawn. So Boaz is saying, stay close to the young women. These were Boaz's female workers. They were tying together the cut stalks of grain, and Boaz told Ruth to stay close to them so she would be well taken care of. He's saying, don't just dwell in these corners. I want you in my field working. And he's saying, don't go to another field because I can't protect you there. But if you stay here in my field, I can make sure that you're taken care of. And that's the same with the Lord, right? He takes care of us all the time, but he really wants to take care of us when we are doing what's right and where we're supposed to be. So God is blessing Ruth, and he's guided her to Boaz's field. Boaz knew that if Ruth stayed in his field, she would be blessed. So in Boaz's field, Ruth would find companionship, protection, refreshment. She was allowed to drink the water. So the kindness that Boaz showed Ruth was amazing. And at this time, we have no indication of romantic attraction between Boaz and Ruth. And we have no idea how Ruth looked. Even if she was pretty, she was probably pretty ragged from a whole day of hard work. Yet Boaz extended his kindness to her. He didn't say, all right, you look rough, please get out of my fields, or only stay in the corners. So we often find it easy to be kind to others when we see a potential return from the investment in our kindness. Yet true kindness is shown when we extend ourselves to others who, as far as we can see, have nothing to give us. And that's exactly what Boaz did. He didn't know that what else is going to happen in Ruth, what we're going to find out later that one of the other girls are going to talk about next week. Boaz didn't know that at this time. He's just seeing this woman showing up, working hard, and he is being kind to her. And that's what we have to do each and every day. So join us on Monday. We are going to take off Saturday and Sunday, and then we will be back on Monday with the next lesson. Love y'all.